Good morning. Happy Monday. Welcome to another episode of Operation Separation. I'm your host, Shell Shapiro, coming to you from another location this week as I start my Shell Across America transition. With me today is a super special guest, Jamie Riene. Did I pronounce that right? I think I did, but I have a knack for butchering names, so please correct me if I'm wrong. Jamie, I'm so excited to dive in on planning your escape. Welcome to Operation Separation.
Thank you so much for having me, Shell. I'm excited to be here. And I was just saying before we got started that this is my first live podcast. So I'm a little nervous, but also excited. So again, thank you for having me.
Yeah, let's celebrate. It's Jamie's first. I love having a confetti drop moment, right?
Yeah.
Because we always have to remember to celebrate the little things, and this is a big moment. It might be a little thing, but if you don't share it, then nobody else can enjoy and celebrate that with you. So I love that you've given us something to start the conversation with, and also to celebrate that small achievement, even if it doesn't feel like one. I know you said you were a little nervous doing the live because it's different than a podcast, but the best thing that we can do is face our fears and do it anyway. And you're definitely no stranger to this. You've planned your corporate escape twice now. What was that like for you?
Yeah. So, I guess kind of just to kick it off, this year has just been a year of firsts for me. I left corporate the first time in 2018 and left again in 2021, and the experiences were totally, totally different. So I have learned to celebrate my moments and to face my fears and all the things that I just really wasn't prepared for the first time I left corporate. So it's been quite a journey to get where I am today, but I'm excited to be here and just to keep moving forward and keep doing things for the first time and then the second time and just getting better and better at what it is that we do. Because I think as adults, we tend to just think that, we can come out of the gate and just be good at what we do, regardless of what we try. And we kind of lose that playful spirit that we have as kids to just be messy and try it. And if it doesn't work, who cares? So it's really letting go of the perfection that I had the first time around and really just kind of embracing that playful spirit of, okay, let's see what we can do. Let's go.
Yeah. Now that the second time around you mentioned was different. Was it different because you had something else in mind that you wanted to do? Was it because you knew you just didn't want to keep going back to corporate and doing something similar? What made it so different?
Well, the first time I left, it was just one of those, I was in an environment to where things had just become toxic for me, and it just was not a healthy place for me to be. And I was constantly just in this angst every day. I literally sick to my stomach on the way to work. And whenever I left there, it was really just running away from something. So it was just I don't care, what I'm I just have to go, for my own mental, physical health, I have to get out of here. So I was really running away from something. And this time, and I ended up going back to corporate less than a year later, just because I wasn't prepared for all of the things, just the way that I would feel whenever I left. So whenever I left this time, I have been doing the personal growth, personal development, the learning ever since then. So for 4 or 5 years now. And this time I was really running towards something. And I think that was a big distinction for me, because it wasn't just okay, how can I get away from this? It's how can I on purpose move towards the direction of my dreams and move towards the direction of where I want to be, not just where do I want to get away from. And I really think that was a big shift in my mind that allowed me to have just a totally different mentality this go around and have it really hopefully stick this time.
Yeah. I think that's an important distinction too, because where in my separation from my previous work life, I wasn't necessarily just running away from the thing, but I detached from my need to overly plan something. As a planner, as somebody that like always wanted to have a backup plan and a backup plan to the backup plan, and like know all the things that could possibly go wrong at any given moment, and have solutions lined up ready to go for any of those instances. My separation was really like more than just getting myself out of it and running away from something, but I let go of that need to plan. So when you're talking about planning your escape and still planning those goals, it is a slightly different mindset to know what you want to work towards. Where for me, it was just like, I something is going to get better, and in order to create that plan, I first need to get out. So there was definitely like levels to that. Um, Talk about, how did you set up your plan? Like where did this even start, that you knew that you needed to like build something to help get you to where you wanted to go?
So whenever I left the first time in 2018, I was honestly just like a puddle whenever I left. I had a little t-shirt business on the side that I thought, I mean, not necessarily that I was running towards that, but I was like, okay, I've got a plan. Like I didn't just leave without a plan. It was just
Yeah.
more of like it's not the same sort of planning that I have now, quote unquote planning. Like then I came from a logistics background. So just like you, it was, I have a plan A, a plan B, a plan C, because like things can go sideways real fast, like in transportation. And so like, as you know, somebody who is responsible for customers and stuff, I would have these very clearly defined plans and everything laid out. And whenever I left the first time, I had no idea that really my mental state would not be like where I needed it to be to really execute on a level that I was used to. So, I mean, honestly, it was like one of those things to where like I left and I had a plan and it's like, well, if this plan doesn't work out, then I can always go back. So that was like my plan B.
Yeah.
But I really just I had no idea how to plan. Like, I just assumed that I would feel better. I assumed that whenever I left and I didn't have that job, that, okay, I don't have these constant headaches. I don't have these constant pressures. You know, I did work in logistics. So it was like 24/7. You know, I'd wake up looking at my email. I'd go to bed looking at my email. I would, you know, constantly be like plugged into work. And
On all
so
the time. Yeah.
on all the time, I mean, I had a team of people that reported to me. So it was always like, go, 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 go. And so my assumption was whenever I'm not in that environment anymore, then I will feel better because that has not left me where I wanted to be. So whenever I remove myself from that, my thought process was like, oh, yeah, sure, I'll feel better. And then I can do all these other things that I want to do. But that was not the case. Like the next morning, I woke up and I expected to feel better. And I, the words I have for it now was basically I had an identity crisis. But, you know, I just woke up and I felt like I didn't have a purpose. And that was very just out of left field, kind of bizarre for me because I mean, I'm a mom to four girls. I'm a wife. I have two rescue dogs. Like I've got things going on. And so to have like, okay, so now I don't have this corporate job. I didn't realize how much of myself was tied up into that. And
Yeah.
so any plans that I had made just kind of like got pushed to the side because my new goal became not feeling like hot trash. So it was just like, what can I do to focus here? And because I never stopped that work and because I just dove deeper into it, even though whenever I returned to corporate, I had like, it's just part of my process now. I mean, it's always something that I'll continue to do and continue to learn and improve myself. So whenever I left this time, my plans were a lot different. Like it was more of, I know the things that I like are my hangups. I've worked through those as far, not all of them, of course. I mean, like we've always got stuff that's kind of uncovering, but you know, for the most part, my plan this time was more around making sure that my mindset was solid and everything. because that honestly has been the biggest game changer. Everything else has just kind of been very much a releasing of plans, a more of a
Yeah.
finding flow and doing things based on what feels good, and really exploring that whole more like of a feminine aspect in business, kind of that whole like, let's focus on the feelings of things. So it's really like it's a different plan than what it started, but it's always been core to making sure that I can feel okay, because if I'm not feeling okay and I'm not feeling good within myself, like everything else is just going to be a struggle. So that's
Yeah.
kind of how the difference in my planning process has looked. Because even whenever I've left this time, what I started out doing has shifted, but it's been in a very like organic way. It's not something that I mean, I did struggle with the decision just because, like you have this idea of what you're going to do in your mind, and sometimes you push at it a little bit longer than you need to just because you think that that's the way to do it. So it has changed, but it's just a different kind of planning now. I don't know if any of that even made sense, but
I, it all makes sense on so many levels. Because again, as a planner, we get used to doing the same things and showing up a certain way and mitigating issues and scheduling our day and going about things a certain way. And when you step back from that intentionally, like, who am I now? What do I have?
exactly.
And even if you have other things to dive into and plans for yourself and goals, you've still taken away something that you're used to.
Yeah.
So that now you're sitting in that discomfort of like, well, what the heck do I do with this freedom now? What do I do with this time? What do I do with this energy? Like, I don't even know where to put all that. And so it is very, very different for me. I had so many people tell me like, oh no, like, how could you leave without, you don't have a job lined up? What are you going to do? How are you going to pay your bills? What are you going to do for money? Like, do you want, my parents still ask me if I want to move back home. Like, I let, on the one hand, like, I'm grateful, very, very grateful that I have the opportunity and that I have the support system to be able to do that and fall back on it. And I have amazing friends that will be continuing to support me and that are amazing to help me, with my Shell Across America plan right now. But I didn't know, I had no idea what I wanted to do next. I just knew that something needed to change, that there was something better on the other side, and that I needed to feel better mentally, emotionally, physically, all the different ways, because I just couldn't. I was sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Yeah.
And when you get to that physical, emotional, mental level of just being drained from being powered on for so long for everybody else and not for yourself,
Yeah.
excuse my language, F the plan. Like, the plan
Right.
does not get out. That's the plan.
Yeah.
Everything else falls into place. And yes, there's still planning that goes on, but it's not to that same extreme level of knowing what I'm doing, when I'm doing it, how it's going to all unfold. I've detached myself from the expectation of how I think things need to end up.
Yeah.
Because the goal, yeah, I have goals, I have plans, I have things I want to do and places I want to be, and like, I loosely think that my career should end up a certain way and look like a certain thing. And if it doesn't, so what?
Yeah.
Like, it just, but it takes, I say that, and it's not easier said than done. Like, it is a daily struggle of like, all right, so this didn't happen today. I didn't post regularly. I didn't show up over here. I'm still me. I'm still
Yeah.
working on myself and following my energy and doing more of the things that feel good. So when I do show up, you're getting 100% of Shell.
Yeah.
I
Wh-
know Jamie's here. I'm getting 100% of Jamie, because if she wasn't good, she wouldn't be here.
Yeah. Which, like, getting to that point, just to be able to say that, I mean, especially on a platform like LinkedIn, to where it's just like, well, I'm following my energy. But it's just like, you have to give to that point to where it's just like, I don't care. Like, I don't care what people think. I don't care if somebody doesn't understand what I'm doing and they have an opinion about it. Like, fine, have all the opinions, but like that doesn't pay the bills and that doesn't like fulfill my soul. And so you just kind of have to get to that point to where it's just like it doesn't matter. You have to do what you feel inside and how that translates. Like, it's not up to anybody else. And I think that was probably one of the biggest shifts, is coming from a corporate environment to where it's like, the day to day, what's expected of you, how to operate within the confines of this 8 to 5 or 9 to 6 or 7 to 7, like whatever the parameters are that you signed up for. You go in and people tell you what to do and you have a plan, like, this is how I'm going to structure my day. And maybe you have a little bit of autonomy within that structure, but really you always know what to do. And then then you become an entrepreneur and it's just like, you're the one that's telling you what to do, but you've never done any of it before. So it's just kind of like a big experiment as to what is working, what's not, how does, because sometimes you push yourself in a direction and you find that, okay, it's challenging, but rewarding, and you've really gained something from the experience. And maybe you do it again, maybe you don't. But like you were fully there and you learned something. And then other times it's just like, you have to do it 4 or 5 times before you get over that comfort, like get over that anxiousness to where it's, what am I trying to say? Basically, like, things are going to be uncomfortable regardless.
Yeah.
And sometimes you do them and you're like, okay, like I did that. I faced that fear. I don't think that's the direction I want to go. But you had to do that in order to make that decision. And sometimes you do stuff and you do it 4 or 5 times and it's like, okay, I'm no longer uncomfortable at this. So now I can, like, I'm not freaking out every time I hit record on a podcast, or I'm not freaking out every time I do this. And it's just that growth is uncomfortable. And, but sometimes, like, especially whenever people are talking about like how it makes you feel or energy or something, I don't mean that I never do anything that makes me feel uncomfortable. Like, I'm uncomfortable all the time, but it's for the bigger vision of what I have for my life. It's
you're pushing yourself to grow.
Yeah. It's uncomfortable because I'm growing, not just uncomfortable because I'm doing a job that I hate. There's a big difference.
Yeah. And there's that very clear distinction of like, is this uncomfortable because it's not good for me? Or is this uncomfortable because I'm pushing through a barrier to get to the next thing? And if you don't try, if you just stay stuck in the thing, you're never going to know if that thing that you were uncomfortable in really needs to stay, or if you need to go. Right. So yeah, I love that you're talking about like getting into that mindset, and that's the way that you've planned your escape the second time around. How has that changed now as you've been working on yourself and growing your own business, coaching other people? How has that changed your personal life? Like, how has that changed your family life? What are you doing differently at home so that you can separate from work?
It's really, I have tried, everything is basically just an experiment, right? But I have tried it both ways, to where whenever I, first left, where I was very structured, where it was just like, okay, I get up at this time, I do this thing, I do, like, I really tried to fit this job into a corporate type model. And then I like had to stop myself because I'm like, I'm just recreating stuff that like I'm not even interested in. So how, it was very intentional to create the pockets of time and the pockets of joy, like, intentionally throughout my day. So I mean, I've started my day with meditation every day for years. So like that part hasn't changed. But now it's like, now that summer is here, I've switched my routine around to where it's like, okay, now I usually walk the dogs in the morning instead of the afternoon, or I can, cook lunch for me and my husband because he works from home too. I can take a nap if I'm tired. I can, it's just like more about living within my body. And I don't know if that's clear or not, but basically just like if I feel tired and I feel worn out, it's not worth it for me to push through and keep pushing because I'm expected to. It's more like you're not getting the best of me. I'd be much better off to just go take a nap. And there was a real undoing that had to happen to really get to that point to where I felt safe enough to let go of the structure and
Yeah.
really, and I think what did it for me is it was a book, a podcast, a quote. I don't remember where it was, but it was basically like something that was said to where you don't create this happy ending. You don't create this joy-filled life by slogging through every day and hating what you're doing and then expect to wind up in this place where, oh, I've created this magical business. And it's like, well, that's not how that works because like you're unhappy the whole way there. So it's really become, even though there are things in entrepreneurship that I don't particularly like doing, it's just part of it, but it's just, I find the joy in the everyday things and the way that I can structure my day and the way that I can work around how I'm feeling and kind of the way my energy fluctuates and how I work, all of that has changed so that I am creating joy along the way. Like every day is good. It's not that it's just
Yeah.
I'm waiting for the weekend or I'm waiting until I have this perfect business model or, everything lined out.
And
It's
there's no more
really
Sunday scaries either.
I know. Like this morning, for example, I have a group of podcasters, like a couple of women that I meet with that we took a podcasting class together. And we meet every other Monday at 7 a.m. And like that would have just been like if you would have told me at my job, like, okay, we have a every other Monday meeting at 7 a.m., I would have been like, what? But it's so fun to just hop on there and get to connect with these women. And there's just a difference whenever you are intentionally creating your day how you want to do it.
Yeah. And it's
And
something that you're looking forward to with people
yeah,
that you're looking forward to getting together with.
yeah.
Um,
I'm
and
not sitting there dreading that on Sunday evening going, oh my God, I've got this meeting at 7 a.m. tomorrow. It's like, ooh, I get to talk to these girls
yeah,
tomorrow. So it's really just such a difference and just how everything just works. I mean, there's just the flow, the way that you can structure. I mean, especially still with COVID in and out and, the way that schools have been, I've got one daughter left in school. And so just having the flexibility to, go pick her up if I need to, or schedule around things, or, like all of those things are not having to ask permission and just be an adult like that.
yeah,
That's like the greatest joy.
yeah. And you don't need to ask somebody for permission to like schedule your day a certain way. You're your own boss.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I always joke that I'm like my best and worst employee,
Yeah.
because if I want to take a nap after lunch just to like rejuvenate and like get my energy back, I have the freedom to do that. And
Yeah.
I've planned my day accordingly a little bit because I do know that I have that dip in my energy. Like I'm more tired. I'm like
Yeah.
have the itis, if you will, to like not want to keep going. So I take even if I don't nap, but like I'm mentally turning off for a little
Yeah.
bit, and then I come back and okay, if I do take a nap and it's too long, then I just know I'm not coming back. Like,
Yeah.
all right, well, tomorrow is another day. But like, if I have a restful break, then I can come back and my energy is restored.
Yeah.
I've recharged my battery. I'm good to go, and I could go for a few more hours. And I just follow that more and more. So what I'm hearing, that I know a lot of people will resonate with is like not just planning to get out and get away and run away, but like you're scheduling joy. You're scheduling things that like can recharge you. And it's more than just an escape at that point. It's a retreat.
Yeah. I love that.
Uh, and we could think of it in terms of a vacation, because really anytime somebody in corporate tells me that they're taking their PTO, or, and I hate that, I just hate that term, paid time
Yeah.
off, but like, because how often are you really off when you're
Yeah.
taking your time off? But even a vacation, then you need a vacation from your vacation when you come back, because you're like, oh, it wasn't long enough, or like, oh,
Yeah.
I didn't get to do all the things I wanted to do. Well, then it shouldn't be called a vacation. Like, you need time for you.
Yeah.
So let's plan your escape, and that what that escape looks like can be your retreat. You shouldn't
Yeah.
have to be running away from something.
Yeah, for sure. And and one of the other things like I didn't really go into whenever you asked me that question the first time about like how did I plan this time? It was really, you know, I think the mindset is the biggest piece, but there was also obviously some financial considerations. I took a severance. We had a big company restructure at the new company that I went to the second time. And at that point of restructure, it was just like, I was doing stuff on the side while I was still in that second corporate job. And it really just got kind of pushed to the back burner whenever COVID hit and pandemic, and we all got sent home because it was like working 24/7 almost. It was just always on, shorthanded, trying to do all of the things. And so whenever the restructure came, it was one of those things like, okay, I'd been promised this stuff for a year and how this would turn out and how, just hold on, hold on, hold on, and then it came and it was like a lateral move into a job that I had no interest in. And it was like, okay, I think it's time, so it was, but having that financial piece of the severance, like finances are a big part of it that I don't want to like sugarcoat, because it's not like I just left corporate and then turned around and started immediately replacing my income or anything like that. So that has been a big piece too. And honest, to just be quite frank, it's taken longer than than that money allowed. But like here we are, we're still kind of making it work. But I mean, your finances, your mindset, figuring out what you want to do, like all of those things are all things that people can start doing now. And so that's really kind of where I want to help people, is not having that just boom, you're done. And now what? And I don't want you to end up in a puddle like I did. So I really try to go
Yeah.
into like, here are the things that you can start doing now. You can start exploring these things. You can start, figuring out what it is that you even want to do. Because I feel like the longer you're in corporate, maybe I'm just like putting this on other people. But for me, the longer I was in corporate, the less in tune I was with my own feelings, with what I wanted to do, my own desires, my own, like what even made me happy. I mean, it was just like for so long, you just kind of shove that stuff down or push it to the side because you've got things to do. You're a grown up and you've got grown up responsibilities. But, so it's one of those things to where if you can just kind of step back and start to look at those things and just start chipping away at them while you're saving money, while you're making the plans, while you're figuring out finances, all of that stuff, it'll make your transition a whole lot easier.
Yeah. And I think part of it too is that we get so used to wearing so many hats and doing all the things, especially as women, more so. Uh, and we're really good at doing a lot of those things.
Yeah.
But as I tell my clients, like, do you really like doing all those things that you're doing day in and day out? Take off some of the hats. Pay attention to what drains you, to what you get like frustrated with, or where you're starting to feel resentful. Like, are you really wanting to do those tasks, even if you're really great at them?
Yeah.
I know for me, like, I kept getting asked to do similar things over and over again, but I wanted to show up over here. I wanted to be doing this thing, and because I was really good at both of them, they kept asking me to do all the things. well, no, I don't actually like doing any of these things. And I was so resentful and angry all the time because that's what they wanted me to do more and more of. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, no, take this off my plate, give it to somebody else. Like somebody else can clearly handle it. And once I did take those things off my plate, like, because I got out and then I didn't have to do them, I had the choice. I made the choice.
Yeah.
No, I'm not doing these things anymore. I will hire somebody else to do them for me. I will get help. I will find support. I will find somebody who knows how to do it better.
Yeah.
And then you take that off your plate. You don't have to worry about that anymore. So for me, it was getting in tune with, what do I actually want to do more of? What feels
Yeah.
good? And I had no idea when I was leaving. I had no idea
Right.
for months. I kind of tried a little bit over here. I tried a little bit over here. Had a lot of imposter syndrome come up along the way of like, oh, who am I to be teaching somebody else how to do this?
Yeah.
And it just came when it was supposed to. Like it wasn't something that I just tried blindly. I was at a networking event, and I'm somebody that's like, I wanted to build up my relationship building. That's one of my core things that I do really well. And that's not how I was being highlighted and showcased and utilized at my previous job. And so I was networking, challenging myself to go to 4 networking events a month in person because it was pre-COVID. And I was talking to people about LinkedIn, and I happened to go to some LinkedIn training. I had my own career coach at the time, and more people I found didn't know how to use the platform. And so I started doing profile reviews and helping people build up their presence and like show up more intentionally on LinkedIn, not just at networking events. And that's how it kind of just all unfolded.
Yeah.
And so now I'm here, and it's not the only platform I'm on, but like I love what I'm doing. There's no
Yeah.
going back once you see what's possible.
Yeah. And I think that goes back to like what you were saying earlier about making plans. It's like, yeah, you make plans, but until you figure out like what it is that you really like doing
Yeah.
and what you want to, it's like, don't spend too much time on it. Have a loose plan that you're like
Yeah.
aiming for and walking towards. But as far as the specifics, you just have to let go of that. I mean, because it just doesn't turn out the way that you think. And that's all good, you know. I'll give you an example. Whenever so part of what I was doing on the side was, I think it was 2019 sometime, I started a YouTube channel for cooking, because like everything that I was reading and everything that I was doing like at that point in time was find your passion, find your passion, find your passion. And it's like, oh, okay, well, I love to cook. I love food. I love, this was one of the things that like brings me joy. So I was like, oh, I'll start this YouTube cooking channel and I'll learn about all of these things. Side note, everything you do, there's learning opportunities in it. So even if you just want to play, it's like, okay, well, now I know how to do YouTube videos and upload and keyword research and titles and all of the things like I had no idea about before, even though that's not the direction I'm in now. But it gives you like a place to pivot from. It gives you a place to where you're gathering skills. And like I see so many people just get frozen in the I don't know what to do. And while going after your passion is not what worked for me, it helped me get along the path. So whenever whenever I took that severance, I was like, oh, well, I'll just pick up that YouTube channel again, because like I said, it got really busy at work. Everything got pushed to the side, back burner. But what I was not cognizant of, like I was, but I was trying to just push and push and push. And I was like, oh, well, I'll just pick up this YouTube channel again, because I've got, a couple hundred subscribers. I've got some, lots of content here. But keep in mind, this was like a year and a half into COVID, a year and a half into lockdown, to where all I have been doing is cooking for my family, like morning, noon, and night, like
And
cooking,
it
cleaning.
probably didn't light you up as much as it previously
And
did.
right. It did not. But my like logical brain was like, oh, you've got so much content though. You've got so much content. You have to go this way because you've got so much like the very much like corporate mentality of like, this is the direction we're going.
Yeah.
And
Because
it
you put
was
in so much time and effort. You don't want it to
right.
be a waste, but it's
There's
not.
really no such thing. I mean, that's what you kind of have to learn. It's just like, yeah, it's not a waste. But like for so long, for months after I left, I just pushed and pushed and pushed in that direction until I heard um, an advertisement for the podcasting course that I ended up taking. And I was like listening to this podcast. I dropped my daughter off at school and I was just like, immediately, like everything, like all of the ideas, the name of my podcast, like who I could talk to, conversations I want to be having, everything just kind of like downloaded in that moment. And it was like, okay, like this is what I want to do. But then I noticed, like, whenever I was in that course, it was like, oh, well, everything that we're learning, it's a different application, but it's like, I've already got skills established here. Like, I
Yeah.
know how to edit. I know how to do postings. I know how to do research. I know how to, find people and talk to people, so it was just like, it's never like the one thing that you have to go through and plan and go in that, like, never give up this. It's just like, how can this lead me to this next little step? How can I use this to pivot and pivot and pivot? Because whatever straight line that you've put to paper on your plan, it's just, like rip it up.
Nope. Not happening.
It's not
Mine
happening.
mine goes in all these like corkscrews and twists and
Yeah.
turns, and like sometimes I end up back where I thought I wasn't going like 2 years ago, or like because things change. And even if you come
Right.
back to the same thing again, like how you picked up your YouTube channel again, it wasn't in the same way. Like
Yeah.
you weren't doing it exactly the same. So had you not gone in that direction though, you like, because you can't look back.
Right.
It's not a waste. You can't look back. You use that time to learn something and develop new skills. And had you not done it that way, it probably would have unfolded differently for you
Right.
to like be in the car and not hear that podcast. Maybe you would hear a different podcast, have a different
Yeah.
idea. Like it would have all developed and unfolded in a different way.
Yeah.
And so never, 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 never like think that you've wasted your time on something, because
Yeah.
it's developing you and getting you ready for the next thing,
Yeah.
whatever that is.
And you never know like how it lines up, because I remember like the last day when I was walking out of my corporate job the first time, one of my friends had said to me, she's like, Jamie, you should start a podcast. Because I listen to podcasts every morning on the way into work and every afternoon on the way home and all the things. And I was just like, I loved the idea of a podcast, but at that point, I was just a totally different person. One, I was very angry just because, and I thought it was my job, but that was only part of it. But like she was like, oh, you should start a podcast. And I just remember it being like, yeah, that sounds fun, but like what would I even talk about? And it's so funny because like 4 years later, like what I'm talking about is the exact same thing I was talking about then, as far as like the conversations I want to have as like with women and their experiences in corporate, and how like it's just a different space for us. Even still today, it's just a different space for women. And I really wanted to highlight that. It would have been a totally different podcast had I started one at that point, just because there was still, like I said, a lot of anger involved. It would have been like, versus now to where it's more of a positive, okay, where have you been since corporate? Let's talk about
Yeah.
those experiences briefly, but like, let's move forward. And so it's just kind of funny, just the way it all kind of works out to where it's like, what was I even talking about? And then like, just to look back and be like, oh, I just didn't have the mindset, the right internal to go with what I wanted to be talking about. But it's just kind of funny the way it all kind of comes full circle.
Yeah. And similar to like how you said you started a YouTube channel for cooking, like I only just started my YouTube channel, but like I dabbled when I was trying to figure out what that thing was, what that next thing was going to be for me. I also love to cook. And I love that for me, it's really calming. It's like, cause there's structure to it. Like I can play around. And it's a little bit different than baking, where everything has its time and its place, and like the
Oof.
measurements need to be precise, and you need to know exactly the art and the science behind it before you can alter and change things to make
Yeah,
them
I'm not a
different.
baker.
But like cooking, you can really like, I always have a recipe in front of me, maybe 2 or 3 recipes actually, and then I kind of like, all right, well, I like what this one has over here. I like what this one has over here. And I've got these ingredients behind me. So I'm going to take a hodgepodge of everything and see what I can come up with. And like, it's never going to be exactly the same if I try to duplicate it. But I like that playfulness of it, but it's also super fun for me to play around and experiment and see what happens from it. And I just, even on 2 totally separate journeys, we still played around with food a little bit
Yeah.
in figuring out if that could be our next thing.
Yeah.
But it took that play, that experimentation, to figure out and get us to that next step.
Yeah.
So it's
Which is
totally not
important.
where I ended up, but
Yeah. Like, I think it's just important that one, you allow yourself the opportunity to play without, I mean, the stakes are not that high, right? Like, anybody can start a YouTube channel, anybody can start a podcast. Just do it and like play with it. Maybe like you'll record 3 episodes and realize like, oh my gosh, I hate this. Or maybe you'll record 3 and be like, you know what, this is kind of fun. Maybe I'll get better at this. Maybe I can, like just having something to test and play and experiment with. And I mean, it's all good. It's all learning. It's all things that you can put in your toolbox for like, okay, I now know how to do this. I know how to do this. I know, I mean, like, not that I ever want to again, like, please no, but if I ever have to make a resume again, like, I have so many skills as far as, I mean, just from this process of things that I've learned as far as like marketing and social media and graphic design and editing. I mean, like, just the list goes on and on of what you learn whenever you actually just undertake a project and just start moving towards something, which is all things that you can do while you're still in corporate, while you're still, start that
yeah,
process of play, start that process of what is it that I like to do? Like, both of us started, or had some experience with the food, and it's like, okay, well, this was a place that we could feel comfortable playing and exploring and all of those things. So like, what is that for you, and how can you play, and how can you just start testing? I mean, like, the thing about social media is you can be as visible or non, like, you don't have to do things that you're not comfortable with yet.
yeah,
Like, you will
yeah.
if you want to
You
keep
probably
moving
should try
forward.
them at least once,
Yeah. But like,
and
you
get
can
yourself out of
start.
that comfort zone.
Yeah.
But you have the ability to decide, like, okay, here's how I'm going to show up today. Here's what content I want to put out. Here's what I want to talk about. And I love that about social media, um, and having an online platform, giving us the freedom to say what we want to say and not be ashamed to say it or
Yeah.
feel like we need to keep ourselves quiet or not speak up. Um, and I think an even bigger thing that has come up for me is being able to ask for help when I need it to. And on days when I don't feel like posting, sometimes I still post because that's my content for the day. I will talk about what I'm feeling, what I'm going through, what I'm navigating right now, because I know other people are going through it too, and they're just not speaking up about it.
Yeah.
So it gives me the platform to connect with other people, even in not wanting to do the thing, not wanting to be visible.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of learning just in that piece too. Like, I really, really struggled with social media. Well, I thought I struggled with social media. What I really struggled with was being visible and feeling worthy. Like, my initial like reaction to every time I was going to post something on social media was like, well, I mean, who gives a flip? I mean, like, that
Yeah.
was, but I've come to realize that that's just my like nervous system response of, oh, okay, so you've got some trauma that you need to heal. You've got some stuff, it's just like, but all of that is such a learning process, and all of that you think is just, oh, I'm not good at social media. It's like, well, what is the deeper issue? What is it that you don't want? Why is it that you don't want to show up? Why is it that you want to create these things, but then stay so small where nobody can find them or nobody can see what you're doing? I mean, because that has been a part of my journey a
Yeah.
lot. So much just, I think it's just like peeling back an onion, it's like you think that you've got your surface level stuff and it's like, oh, like I don't understand social media. And I like pull back a layer and it's like, oh, I don't want people to see me on social media. And it's like, oh, I don't want to be visible because I've had this previous experience where as a kid, if I'm visible, I'm in trouble, so it's like, oh, and then you peel back another layer. So it's just like this whole, you slowly but surely start to find yourself. And that is not necessarily a quick process, depending on where you are, like emotionally in your healing journey, because a lot of it, I think that entrepreneurship is just one big, huge therapy session for you to, like get all your stuff resolved because it's like, oh, it's coming up.
What do you think we're doing right now?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, whether it's intentional or not, I mean, that's part of having these conversations for change.
Yeah.
That's why I keep it so candid. Like
Yeah.
we're talking about things in real time. It's not scripted. Nobody like had any, besides my caption post, like they had no knowledge of what was going to come up or be discussed. I mean, certainly if they research us or look up some of our other stuff, they might have an idea of what we're talking about. Hopefully they're here because they have an idea of what we're talking about. But like we're doing it. And the people that can relate to it and that need to hear it are the ones who are going to be here and show up. And we never know who's going to need to hear our stuff, hear our message, hear what we've gone through.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so important for us to keep showing up and putting our stuff out there, even on days when we don't feel like it.
Yeah. And like even if you think it's messy, like my journey, I mean, like I've left corporate not once, but twice, I didn't have it figured out. And there's not shame in that. There's just like, oh, okay, I didn't get it the first time. And I didn't have that guide to really help me through that experience. Like I had a personal therapist, like to help me with like my emotional stuff, but not like a business guru or somebody who kind of knew both sides of it, because it's not just the mental stuff. I mean, it's like, yes, you've got the mental and you've got the business, but it's more of like what I found is before I became more aware of like myself and my emotions and all of the things where I would think that I had a business problem when really it was a courage problem, a worth problem, a visibility, it was just like, oh no, this is just the symptom. This is not like the root cause. And I mean, I know I've said it 100 times already, but it's like, that's what I want people to understand is that stuff that you can work on now. Like just starting to play, just starting to figure out like, what are those things that make you have fun? What are those things that trip you up? What are those things that you really have a visceral reaction that you do not want to do? Because that's probably where you need to explore, because it's like, if you're like, oh, I don't want to do that, check yourself and make sure that you're not just keeping yourself small and keeping yourself in a box, because that's what you've been trained to do. Like, it's just this whole expansion, this whole opening, everything that, I mean, it's all up in the air. And I mean, like, personally, I'm an open book. So I am like, okay, yeah, struggle bus. Here I've been, it's just like, but here's where I'm going. Like, this bus is still moving. So it's really just, I think there needs to be more candid conversations about like all of this stuff.
More layer peeling, more onion opening. Because what's the cost of us not having these conversations? More and more people are just going to stay silent.
Yeah.
And
or stay stuck or stay miserable or think that they can't have happiness until they retire or continue to live their lives only working for, living for the weekends and all of that. And you get one shot, I mean, it's just, if it makes you uncomfortable, that's fine. That's part of life. Like, figure out what it is that you really, really, really want to do and just move towards it.
Yeah. And you brought up something just a few moments ago about like being stuck and like staying in it. And are you the like think about are you the one that made yourself small, or did somebody else make you feel like you had to stay in that space? And I can certainly say in my experience, like it was a combination of the two. I definitely felt silenced a lot, but then I also put myself in that box
Yeah.
because there was only so many times I could hear, "Oh no, you need to stay quiet," or "Put your hand down," or "Don't speak up," or "Give somebody else a chance."
Mm-hmm.
And then so I started doing it to myself.
Yeah, you start to
And
minimize yourself and
yeah,
what you want to say, and the thing, like it's it's so ingrained, like from the time we're little, from the time, and it just keeps going to where it's just like if you were a rambunctious kid, or if or just like, okay, no, sit down, be quiet, sit down, be quiet, sit down, and that's what they want you to do in corporate, is just sit down, do your job, and be quiet. And it's just, I think the older you get, the more it's just like, nah, like, not gonna
do
do
I
it.
do I really need to stay quiet? Do I really need to like keep doing things the way that they've always been done and not challenge the status quo? And like, meanwhile, I'm like dying over here, like
Mhm.
falling apart, like breaking down, and like having all these physical ailments. And it's all related. It's
Yeah,
all related to me, like staying stuck and staying in that closed box.
yeah,
So yeah, I want to help so many people plan their escape.
yes.
And um, I know you had a 5-day challenge at one point to help people like ramp this up and get started with it. Is that something that you are launching periodically? Like, what can people do now to be able to plan their escape?
Yeah, I do have a free resource. There are like 7 things you can do today if you think that corporate's no longer a good fit, because I do want to really reiterate that there are things that you can do today. And one of the biggest, and I don't even think that it's on this list, and I should probably revamp that, but one of the biggest things that I think that you can do is have that internal shift, because it's amazing what we can do with our minds whenever we really just kind of have a different perspective. I started seeing my job as my investors. I heard this tip on a podcast. Whenever I go to work, I'm going to meet with my investors. Like this is what allows me to have my dreams that I'm focusing on. Like this is what's bankrolling my dreams right now. So if you can just kind of have that shift, it also lets you detach from all of the drama of corporate, because you don't have to get so involved with all of the BS that happens, because you can just be like, oh, this is short term. I don't have to get involved in this. I can just do my job, show up, please my investors, and then do what I want to do, like with my own stuff. But I do have that resource that goes over the other 7 things that you can do today to really get started with that. And then, as far as my challenge, that was the first time that I had hosted a challenge like that.
Yeah.
And it was actually a lot of fun. And I was scared to death to do it because it was live for 5 days. And it was a really cool experience. But I will be doing that like 3 times a year is kind of my tentative plan at this point. So maybe in another month or so, I'll be hosting it again.
Okay.
So I'll give that information, and then the link that you can download for the 7 steps if you think corporate is not it. That way you can at least get an idea of what you can do today before you ditch the paycheck.
Yeah.
Because there
I,
are perks to that. Don't I don't want to like sugarcoat that, as far as, there obviously there it's easier to pursue your passions and your dreams and all of those things whenever money is not your primary concern. Like obviously it's still a concern. You're in business for yourself now, but like having that
security.
security, that comfort, that, yeah, it's big, because otherwise there's so much pressure to get something like immediately, that's whenever you get into that really anxious energy of just trying to push and make things happen, when really it's more of a process.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so I'm going to share the free resource with everybody in the comments. 7 things plus the one
Yeah.
that you can do
Yeah.
to start transitioning out of corporate and plan your escape now. Don't wait until it's too late. There's definitely things you can do today to get started. And just choose one thing from the list. You don't even have to tackle everything all at once. Go like one thing at a time. For me, it's
Yeah.
1 hour at a time, even. Uh,
Yeah.
do
And they're
what feels
super
good for
simple
you.
things. They're real easy. I mean, like it's stuff that you can just like, oh, like, okay, this is a process. I can just kind of start chipping away at this and kind of understand where I'm going. So whenever you have that like F it moment to where you're ready to walk out the door, at least you've got something lined
Yeah.
up as to where you're like, okay, I feel comfortable like in the direction I'm going.
Yeah. All right. So we've got that free resource for you. I will also share Jamie's LinkedIn profile so that you can reach out and connect with her here. You can also follow her on Instagram. I'll share that with you as well. And any other links that Jamie will grace us with, I will be sure to plug them all right here for you to get in touch, because we want you to plan your escape and you don't have to do it alone. If you're liking these operation separation conversations, make sure to follow Shell Station for more ways to separate yourself. We'll be back next week with another conversation for change. I don't have a guest lined up for next week, so it will be a solo mission, and that's okay. But stick around because more conversations are coming up. Until then, make sure to follow us, and same Shell time, same Shell Station. We're saying bye for now.